Here is another one of those tips that you can or cannot use on your project, depending upon your skill level at stair building. So if this is your first time building stairs, or you're going to be working on a project where all of the measurements need to be accurate and precise, then I would strongly suggest laying out the entire stairway on the floor. So if you have a concrete slab or a wood-framed floor, or a level surface that you can work off of, unlike most decks or other outdoor building projects. And that will be as simple as spacing the measurements for the tread depth equally all the way until you get to the last step. And if you notice here, we're back a little bit behind the wall, and that's going to be because these measurements right here represent the face of the stair stringer. So the face of the stringer, where the riser is going to attach to. So again, we're not lining it up with the face of the riser, and we're not going to be lining it up with the front of the nosing in this example here. And to verify that this section of the stringer is in the right place, all we need to do is grab a level and plumb up from our measurement marks. And if we're off a little bit, we're going to be able to see it because it's either going to be too far forward or too far backward, telling us that we either got problems with the measurements on the floor or the measurements on the stringer. Now, another thing that you could run into will be the fact that you're off a little bit. For example, if I plumb up from this line here, the face of the stringer here could be right on the money and in the exact location. However, if I come down here, it could be off 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 inch. And if it is, there's a very good chance that you didn't lay out the stringer correctly. Another common problem with beginner stair builders, and even some people who have built more than a few sets of stairs. And I wouldn't suggest cutting the other stringers until you check the stringer you're going to be using as your pattern. So don't cut the next stringers until you've verified that this stringer was cut correctly. Next up, let's go ahead and relay out the bottom to where this line here represents the face of the nosing and not the face of the stringer. And to do that, all we need to do is readjust it for the width of the riser and the depth of the stair tread nosing. And in our example here, we moved it over 1 3/4. We have a 3/4 inch riser and a 1 inch overhang. And then we can plumb up from that measurement there. So you can lay it out however best you think it's going to work for your project. And don't get these lines confused. Don't mix one up with the other. Maybe write down what the line represents on a couple of the lines you drew on the floor. So let's go ahead and head to the back here where you can see the larger measurement here. Just don't forget that the 11 3/4 isn't going to represent the front of the nosing on the last step. That's still going to be 10 inches. So if we go up to the top with our level, we're going to plumb up to the top and measure off of the face of the wall. We're going to be adding 3/4 of an inch for the thickness of our riser and 1 inch for the depth of the stair nosing. And that will look something like this. So again, if I was going to grab my level and plumb down from the face of this step here, the last step on the stairway, or I can start from the bottom with my level and plumb up to where I can see where the first step is going to start from the top. And hopefully this makes sense. Now, another tool that you might need will be to figure out the length of the stairway, where the stairway is going to basically start and where it is going to stop. So in order to do that, the first thing we're going to need to do will be to measure the total rise, the overall distance between the top of the upper level and the top of the bottom level. And in our example, we're going to have 8 foot 9 inches or 105 inches. And I do have other videos on this at our website. Go to the stairs link and then look for basic stair building videos. However, I will provide you with a shortcut to that if this makes sense to you, because the first thing we need to figure out is how many steps we're actually going to have in the stairway. And we're not going to be able to do that without this number and then creating an individual stair riser height. So to do that, what I'm going to do is enter 105 into into the calculator, which would represent this measurement in inches. And then I'm going to divide that by 7. And if I wanted to have a 7-inch riser, then I would have 15 individual 7-inch risers. However, since most building codes allow us to have a 7 3/4 inch riser, I'm going to try dividing this by 7.5, and that brings us to 14 risers. And keep in mind that this particular stairway was designed specifically for 7.5-inch risers and 14 risers with 13 steps. Now let's go ahead and pretend that this stairway here was 107 inches, and I divided 7.5 into that, and it came up with this number here. Then all I would need to do would be to divide either 14 or 15 into 107. So let's go ahead and do that. So 107 divided by 14 equals about a 7 5/8-inch riser height. And hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, again, go to the website and check out some of our other videos, because without the amount of risers, you are not going to know how many steps you're going to have. And without that, you're not going to be able to figure out the length of the stairway. Now, another thing I want to point out is that you might have an overhang. And in our example here, our overhang is 1 inch. And if you don't have an overhang, then it would stop right here, or it could even stop at the floor depending upon the construction of the stairway. Now the reason why I'm showing you this is because you're going to need to add the width of the riser along with the nosing if you're going to have it. This distance here is 1 3/4 inches. We have a 1-inch overhang or a 1-inch nosing and a 3/4 inch thick riser, and your number could be different depending upon the length of the overhang and the width of the riser. So here you can see in this example that the overhang is sticking past just a little bit. And the next thing we're going to need to figure out, and you might or might not need a calculator for this, will be to figure out the depth of the stair tread. And in our example here, it's going to be 10 inches. If your depth is going to be a little wider, then you will have to adjust for that. Keep in mind that in this video, we're not talking about how to fit a stairway within a particular distance. We're trying to figure out the length of a stairway with a certain tread measurement. And to do that, we're just simply going to multiply the width of the tread, 10 inches, by the number of steps. And in this stairway, we have 13 steps. And you're usually going to have one less stair step than the amount of risers. Here we have 14 risers and 13 steps. If the stairway was going to have 13 steps and 11-inch treads, then we're going to have 143 inches in horizontal distance for the length of the stairway. And if I wanted to make that number smaller, I could take 13 and multiply it by 9.5 to get 123.5 inches if my local building codes will allow it. Keep in mind that 10 inches is usually going to be the smallest width for an individual stair tread on a residential stairway, or a stairway that would be located in most homes. So again, our measurement is from the wall here. However, we're going to have to take into consideration that this measurement might not be exactly where we need it to be, especially if we don't allow for the distance right here. And for those of you who do have experience building stairs, pay attention, because this is the biggest mistake I've seen that most stair builders make. And it's something that most architects aren't aware of. And if they are aware of it, I can tell you right now that most of the stairs I built usually ended up with problems if the architect didn't allow for additional space right here. So not too difficult, I hope. However, if you do have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment area. And thanks for watching. To learn more about home building and repairs, visit us at our website. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content. See you next time.